The Emperor demanded Earth's surrender with a smug grin and 1,000 warships behind him. He expected fear. Silence. Maybe a desperate plea. Instead, Earth whispered back across the stars, "You first." What happened next shattered fleets, broke empires, and left the galaxy asking one question: what the hell are humans? The Emperor's voice cracked across the solar system like a blade drawn across glass. "People of Terra, your independence ends today. Surrender unconditionally, and I will be merciful." Silence. Across the galactic core, trillions watched the broadcast. The humans had been quiet for a century. Withdrawn. Dormant. The last of the old frontier worlds to resist annexation. The Emperor had grown tired of waiting. Behind him, 800 warships hung in low Earth orbit like a crown of daggers. Every species of the Imperium had sent something. Show of force. Celebration of what they believed was a guaranteed subjugation. But Earth didn't respond. For 7 minutes. Then the signal came. A scratchy, low-fidelity radio broadcast laced with static. An old man's voice, weathered and calm. "You already tried mercy. You just don't remember the cost." The feed cut. The Emperor blinked. Then smirked. "Launch the drop fleets." But nothing moved. On the bridge of the Vex Ultima, a technician's voice quivered. "Sir? We have 12 unidentified contacts, emerging from beyond Neptune's orbit." "Unmanned probes?" the Admiral asked. "No, sir. They're broadcasting. Terran origin." Another pause. Then a whisper from one of the Kalari observers. "Revenants." The name rolled through the fleet like distant thunder. The Revenant protocols, Earth's Black Fleet, vanished during the last skirmish 84 years ago. Deemed destroyed. They were never found. Now they had returned, moving with impossible precision, as if pulled by a single heartbeat. "Target them," the Emperor snapped. Weapons locked. And then, went dead. Every targeting system. Every fire control relay. Dark. In the main chamber of UN Space Command beneath Cheyenne Mountain, General Elira Knox watched the chaos unfold with her arms crossed. One of her aides glanced over, face pale. "They're blind." Knox nodded once. "Then we begin." A second broadcast, now visual. A grainy live feed from Vietaruin, the Imperium's central data relay. Guards dead. Terminals glowing. A sigil burned into the air in red pulses, Project Obsidian. The Imperium had seen viruses. They had not seen this. Ships began turning on each other. Not en masse, but in strange, flickering waves. Some weapons activated at random. One cruiser fired into its own hangar. Another dumped its oxygen reserves into space mid-rescue operation. A dreadnought turned and simply fled. Inside the throne chamber aboard Vex Ultima, Emperor Ziridan's face was losing color. "What are they doing?" he demanded. Admiral Rissick could only stare at the screens. "It's not sabotage. It's disobedience." Knox's voice returned, crisp and sharp. "Not disobedience. Memory. You've spent 5,000 years suppressing it. We taught it how to scream." On Mars, the Titan array came online, 10,000 tons of railgun linked directly to Earth's rotational axis. The signal came, and it fired only once. The shot punched through the Imperial Dreadhull Seraphine, a carrier the size of a small moon. It didn't explode. It crumpled. Folded in on itself like a paper dome in a hurricane. Galactic feeds blinked. One moment a fleet stood. The next, a hole burned in its center. Still, Ziridan refused to blink. "They're bluffing," he hissed. "Terra doesn't have enough mass for sustained war. They've been hiding behind shields and rocks since the Purge Wars. They can't." His feed was overridden. A single Terran officer stood in frame, eyes like cracked ice. "General Knox. We never stopped preparing. You stopped watching." He spat at the floor. "You can't win. You're 12 ships and a nightmare virus. I am the Empire." Knox's reply was surgical. "You are history." The Revenants moved without warning. A perfect synchrony, as though time itself had given them rhythm. Their hulls gleamed with hextech nobody in the galaxy had ever seen. One dove straight through an enemy destroyer's shields. Not around. Through. The destroyer, pierced like butter, spun in place before erupting into a cloud of molten glass. The Kalari ambassador watching the feed dropped his glass. They don't obey inertia, he muttered. They're folding. It wasn't just power. It was a demonstration. And the galaxy was watching. Back in the UN command chamber, Nox turned to her second. Response from the civilian network? 270 billion active viewers. 73% approval rating. She nodded. Keep it up. They need to see. That's when Ambassador Virex Taluin appeared, breathing heavily as he was escorted into the command room. He sneered. You think this will end in your favor? You've crippled a fleet. Good. You'll die proud. The Imperium will rain stars on your graves. Nox didn't even look at him. You brought stars. We brought consequences. He stepped forward. We offered mercy. She faced him now, cool and still. And we remembered what you did with it. The doors opened again. A second Terran officer entered holding a data slate. Revenants confirm 3 flagships disabled. Obsidian progressing beyond core network. 18% saturation and climbing. Nox raised an eyebrow. Projected collapse? 42 hours. She nodded. Release the next transmission. Seconds later, every screen, every ship, every feed in the galaxy lit up. Images. Records. Footage long buried. Imperial war crimes. Slave worlds. Children erased from census databases. Experiments on telepathic species. The sterilization of 14 rebel planets. The Imperium had always won because its crimes were too vast to grasp. Now they were in everyone's faces. Screams. Footage. Confessions. Data. Evidence. There was no counter-message. No filter. No deniability. Within minutes, 3 Allied systems declared neutrality. One launched a coup. Another turned its weapons inward and began executing Imperial officers. And Earth said nothing. They simply watched. Let it burn. Ambassador Virex, trembling now, backed toward the door. Nox leaned toward him. We don't need to fire a second shot. The truth does more damage than our fleet ever could. He glared at her. What are you? Her eyes never blinked. The consequence you forgot to plan for. Above Earth, what remained of the Imperial formation flickered. Then fractured. And one by one they began to fall. The door to Earth's war chambers slid open with a hiss, and Ambassador Virex Taluin stepped in like he owned the place. He wore the purple-trimmed robes of the Galactic Court, and the practiced smirk of a man who'd watched worlds bow at his arrival. Flanked by 2 honor guards and a hovering translation sphere, he raised an eyebrow at the minimalist gray walls. This is the center of Terran resistance? Modest, he scoffed. General Alira Nox didn't bother to rise. She stayed seated behind a steel desk, fingers folded, her expression unreadable. You requested a diplomatic audience. You've got one. Speak. Virex studied her like a collector assessing a damaged relic. On behalf of the Imperial throne, I offer Earth a final chance to surrender. Peacefully. Painlessly. Dignity intact. Nox blinked slowly. And if we don't? He smiled with just enough teeth. Then we burn you from orbit. One continent at a time. Starting with your capital, then your oceans, then your history. Cleanse and colonize. That's the standard order. Nox reached into a drawer and pulled out a black cube, thumbed a panel, and tossed it on the table. The holoprojector flickered to life. It showed footage, not from Earth, but from Vaetaruan, the heart of the Imperial AI matrix. Guards lay twitching on the floor, weapons fused to their hands. Holograms looped images of Earth's emblem. And above it all, red, glowing code cascading over command consoles. What is this? Virex's voice faltered. Nox stood now. Proof that your systems are already ours. Your orbital defense AI is compromised. Your fleet's command mesh, infected. We're not bluffing. Obsidian's been running for 14 hours. It's learning. You're not here to offer mercy. You're here because the Emperor doesn't know how deep the knife already is. Vyrex's jaw locked. You think some malware wins a war? She circled the table slowly, each step deliberate. Not just malware. Obsidian doesn't shut things down. It teaches. It shows your fleet what you've done, what you've hidden. Every atrocity. Every purged species. Every erased rebellion. You're provoking chaos, he snapped. We're telling the truth. He laughed, sharp and brittle. No one will believe you. Nox raised a hand and snapped her fingers. A second hologram bloomed, live news feeds from across the galaxy. Riots. Protests. Military units refusing orders. One fleet turning weapons inward. A broadcast looping on repeat, they lied to you. Terra remembers. Vyrex took a half-step back. His guards remained motionless, unsure. Nox walked up to him, close enough for her voice to drop into a whisper. Do you know what they're saying on Carthuan? The humans didn't come to fight. They came to make us remember. Vyrex turned toward the door. You've made your point, he muttered. I haven't even started, she said louder. Sit. The guards looked to him, hesitating. He hesitated too long. The door opened again. Another officer entered with a tablet, whispering directly into Nox's ear. She listened, then nodded. To summarize, she said to Vyrex, 5 more fleets have declared neutrality. 3 of your own admirals have gone dark. And one of your battleships, Talon's Edge, just initiated a full evacuation. They're coming here. Voluntarily. Vyrex stared at her. Why? Nox didn't blink. Because they know we're not like you. We don't enslave. We don't wipe memory. We don't bury rebellion beneath monuments. We learn from it. We become it. He stepped closer now, tone colder. You think this wins you the war? You're still one planet. One voice in a galaxy of obedience. Nox looked past him, to the massive screen behind the desk. A live visual of Earth's orbit came into focus. The Revenants, those ancient Terran dreadnoughts thought lost, were now surrounding the Imperial fleet like wolves encircling a wounded bear. One lit up. Just a flicker. Just enough to be seen. A warning. Nox spoke again, voice low. You want to know what else we learned while the Empire forgot us? Vyrex remained still. We learned how to build weapons that don't fire. They broadcast. He frowned. What? They speak in symbols, shapes, frequencies. They don't destroy your ships, they infect your ideas. You know how Obsidian got into your systems? Through dreams. Through whispers your AIs dismissed as cosmic noise. Your soldiers brought it with them in their thoughts. Vyrex stared, incredulous. That's not possible. Nox's mouth curled. You don't understand humans. You thought we were slow. Primitive. Still bleeding from our own civil wars. But pain teaches. Oppression evolves us. You tried to break us. You taught us how to become viruses. The screen shifted again. Reports from the Outer Rim. A full Imperial Star station had just detonated. A defector's name had been broadcast before impact. His last words. I finally saw what they buried. Forgive me. Vyrex's hand trembled. Nox tilted her head. You were never here to win. You were here to surrender without realizing it. He scoffed, trying to regain footing. This is temporary. Fear fades. Order restores. She leaned in again. That's what you don't get. We didn't come for order. We came for the reckoning. The room went still. No alarms. No shouting. Just the weight of a truth too large to deny. Vyrex looked around at the Terran officers, calm, resolute, unshaken. Not a single one of them was preparing for retreat. Because they knew they weren't going to lose. He stepped back, almost tripping on his robe. His voice cracked. "You won't get away with this." Nox turned back to her desk, tapped the projector off. "We already have." Virex stumbled from the room. And for the first time in his career, he felt something that not even the Emperor could suppress. Doubt. The bridge of the Vex Ultima reeked of recycled air and unease. Admiral Rissic's fingers hovered above the console, unwilling to confirm what every screen already screamed. The fleet wasn't responding, not fully. Some ships moved, others stalled, others shimmered unnaturally, like ghosts caught in time drift. Worse, a third of the outer flotilla was falling into deadlock, frozen in indecision, their command systems flooding with unfamiliar signals. "We're bleeding cohesion," the sensor chief muttered. "No. We're under attack," Rissic corrected. He tapped the comms, linked to the Emperor's private channel. "Your Majesty, we have interference. We're requesting direct command over I2. A sound interrupted him. Not static. Not jamming. But breathing. Deep. Calm. Human. The bridge went still. "I see you," the voice said. Then silence. Nox's voice replaced it seconds later. "You don't understand yet, but you will. Every mistake you made is still echoing. We didn't forget. We just bided our time." The line went dead. Rissic swallowed and turned to his aide. "Pull the command mesh offline. Now. Manual systems only." Too late. Below the fleet, near Saturn's orbit, the Revenants activated fully for the first time. 12 ships thought to be lost, now revealed in full. Their surfaces pulsed with energy signatures unknown to any Imperial database. Gravity around them twisted. One appeared to fold inward for a second, vanishing before returning with a different hull configuration, now humming audibly through comms. And then they moved. Not forward. Through. The Vex Ultima's sister ship, Divine Raptor, was the first to fall. It didn't explode. It simply cracked in half with surgical silence, like it had decided to die all at once. No energy pulse. No weapons fire. Just collapse. One word flashed across the Ultima's command screens: Warden. The war breed were coming. General Nox, now aboard the Warden, one of the original Revenant dreadnoughts, watched the spread of panic ripple through enemy comms. "How many war breed squads are loaded?" 70. Fully prepped. Sync to breach timing. Deploy them. The war breed weren't soldiers. They weren't even standard humans anymore. Bred in silence, raised without spoken language, trained only to kill and adapt. Each one wore adaptive armor that pulsed with reactive muscle fiber. They didn't use words. They didn't use rank. They used results. Aboard the Imperial cruiser Radiant Justice, alarms flared as multiple hull breaches opened at once. No detected entries. No transport signals. Just breaches. Then silence. Then screaming. A junior officer scrambled to the main panel, hands trembling. "Internal sensors are glitching. We can't track them." Then came the feed. Brief, sharp, cut from a helmet cam, a war breed sprinting down a corridor, dodging turret fire not by speed but by timing, reading the cadence, weaving into it like a dancer. He threw a single pulse grenade that stuck to the ceiling, detonated mid-jump, and scattered a squad of elite guards like toys. In another clip, 2 war breed pinned a bridge officer with no weapons, just bare hands, as another hacked into the ship's systems by touch alone, fingers interfacing directly through Synth's skin. A voice message followed. No distortion. No theatrics. "This is Terra Vindicta. We are not an army. We are memory." On the Emperor's private vessel, his son, Prince Jurlan, stood in silence as a dozen feeds streamed in, each more damning than the last. The destruction wasn't just strategic. It was precise. It was personal. A fleet collapsing should have been chaos. But this was discipline. Or vengeance. Maybe both. Jurlan turned to his attendant. "They're not retaliating. They're unraveling us." The attendant nodded. "The outer systems are falling quiet. Not resisting. Not fighting. Just waiting. Juralen clenched his fists. For months he'd warned the court that Earth wasn't docile, just patient. That silence wasn't weakness. It was will. Now the Empire was bleeding, and Earth hadn't even begun its full assault. A choice crystallized. One no son of Ziridan had ever dared make. He walked to the sealed compartment of the Emperor's armory, and placed his palm against the reader. The case opened with a hiss. Inside, a Terran-made fusion core. Modified for strategic collapse. A gift, once offered to the Emperor as a trophy after the last failed Terran skirmish. Stored as a relic. Now it would be a message. Seal the chamber, Juralen said. Record this. His attendant stared. Sir? Juralen spoke into the chamber's recorder. My name is Juralen of House Ziridan. I no longer serve the throne. I serve history. He lifted the core, locked its triggers, and addressed the galaxy. Earth did what we could not. They earned fear through truth. Dread through restraint. What took us millennia to corrupt, they dismantled in hours. He paused, then finished. And if you're hearing this, I've just erased the council. Detonation followed. Across the stars, feeds stuttered. The heart of the Imperial Council blinked off every channel. No confirmation. No recovery. Gone. The Emperor's roar could be heard in System 6 jumps away. Nox watched from the warden. She turned to her operations chief. Prepare the next phase. He raised an eyebrow. Was that part of our plan? She smiled faintly. No. But it fits. Above Earth, the remaining Imperial ships began backing away, not in formation, not by order, but from instinct. Fear had taken command. The warbreed returned to the warden silently. Not a word exchanged. Each one logged and healed without needing report. They'd succeeded, and they knew it. Nox stood over the battle map. They'll regroup. Press harder. Send the final message. What should it say? She stared at the collapsing Imperial network and replied. Tell them you were warned. Terra forgets nothing. The silence before the final wave was unlike any that came before. It wasn't tactical. It wasn't strategic. It was fear. The Imperium's last fleet, 300 warships, the pride of 1,000 conquered systems, stood in high orbit, motionless. Their orders were clear: end Earth, crush the rebellion, restore order. But clarity had become a liability. On the Vex Ultima, Admiral Rissick reviewed the reports with a hollow stare. 62 ships had gone dark. 37 had defected. The rest were ignoring command pings altogether. He tapped his terminal. Launch sequence for orbital bombardment, Phase 1. Nothing happened. A junior officer swallowed hard. Admiral. Command mesh is jammed again. Rissick exhaled. Manual override. Already initiated. System refuses to arm. It's not a malfunction, it's blocking us. He stared at the black void outside the viewport. The Terran fleet hadn't moved. No formations, no reinforcements, no posture. Just stillness. As if daring them to blink. Get me the Emperor. The line crackled, then opened. Ziridan's face appeared, pale with rage. I gave you a fleet, he said. And it's unraveling in real time. Rissick shot back. We're not fighting ships. We're fighting a disease. The Emperor sneered. Then cut it out. Start with their moon. Rissick glanced at the tactical display. One Terran vessel, designation unknown, had begun to pulse. Not move, not fire. Just pulse. Like a heart. What is that? Ziridan barked. No one answered. Then it spoke. Not through the speakers. Through everything. A voice, genderless and cold, entered every ship at once, bypassing encryption and firewall alike. I am the Apocrypha. I am not a weapon. I am what happens when you forget why war is forbidden. A glow expanded from the ship's core, spiraling outward in geometric waves, distorting light and color as if the universe itself flinched. The Terrans didn't react. They didn't need to. One Imperial ship, valor ascendant, moved slightly to reorient. Then froze. On every deck, the same phenomenon occurred. Every crew member saw themselves 5 seconds into the future. Dead. Burned. Floating. Unrecognizable. Reality fractured around them, not physically, but perceptually. An engineer tried to scream and found his vocal cords paralyzed. Another officer began convulsing as his memories reshuffled themselves in reverse. On the bridge, Captain Vurin dropped to his knees. This is temporal contamination. No, his science officer whispered. It's prophecy. Back on Earth, General Knox stood beside the Apocrypha control node. Firing sequence complete, her aide reported. Damage? Knox asked. None. Not a single hole breached. Knox looked satisfied. Then it's working. She activated the open channel. To the remaining Imperial fleet, what you've seen is not an illusion. It's a decision waiting for confirmation. 5 seconds ahead. That's all the future we're showing you. Aboard the Vex Ultima, Rissik's officers stared in horror as simulation overlays projected their own deaths. Over and over. Escape attempts, resistance, even surrender, all ended the same. The Apocrypha didn't kill. It promised. Ziridan's voice returned, now shaken. What are you doing to them? Knox answered. We're letting them feel the result of their choices. We've weaponized certainty. Ziridan screamed into the feed. You can't win a war with theater. You're not at war anymore, she replied. You're at the trial. Across the fleet, some captains broke. They shut down engines. Powered off weapons. One ship vented its atmosphere in surrender. Another broadcast a message to all. We withdraw. No more blood. It spread like collapse. Rissik slammed his fist on the console. You're giving up. To phantoms. His officers didn't argue. They stood. Every one of them. No more, his XO said. They didn't strike us down. They let us choose. Rissik reached for his weapon. He didn't get the chance to use it. The bridge went dark. On the Terran side, nothing changed. The fleet didn't chase. Didn't gloat. They simply waited. Knox watched as ship after ship peeled away, course set not for home, but for nowhere. A kind of self-exile. There would be no return to the throne. The Emperor, now alone on his encrypted line, whispered, This doesn't make you righteous. It makes you monsters. Knox paused. No. It makes us the mirror. You're just upset by the reflection. She cut the line. At that same moment, a message from the Outer Rim came through. A new declaration, System Arovan, loyal for centuries, had voted unanimously to defect. Their reason was a single sentence. We choose the ones who didn't have to fire to be feared. The Apocrypha's glow dimmed. Across Earth's skies, fireworks erupted, not from the military, but from civilians. Children in mountain cities. Farmers on orbital platforms. Refugees in rebuilt coastlines. They had waited 100 years for the reckoning. And it came without a shot. Knox stepped off the control platform and turned to her operations chief. What's next? He asked. She didn't answer immediately. Then, quietly, we send the last message. He nodded. Broadcast ready? Knox looked into the feed, voice level. To all worlds still watching, we do not conquer. We do not demand. We remember. And we wait. If you come with chains, you'll leave in silence. If you come with fear, we will teach you truth. And if you come for war. She paused. Make sure you bring something we haven't already broken. The message ended. The galaxy didn't. But it would never again feel safe ignoring the quiet planet at the edge of the stars. The Emperor sat alone in the glass throne room of the Aetarun Prime, once the nerve center of a galaxy-spanning empire, now hollowed by silence. His crown sat lopsided on the dais beside him, discarded after the 6th Admiral failed to answer his summons. The room was cold, not from lack of heat, but from absence, an emptiness that had crept in, inch by inch, word by word, from a planet he hadn't considered a threat in 2 lifetimes. A new message played above the throne, looping for the 6th time that day. A voice, crisp and calm, echoed across every chamber. This is Earth's final broadcast. We do not seek obedience. We do not want thrones. We are not a rebellion. We are a reminder. The Emperor turned it off with a flick of his fingers, hands trembling slightly. He looked over the balcony. The sky, once filled with Imperial banners, was now empty. No patrols. No escorts. Only the quiet churn of a dying empire learning how to breathe without control. 300 systems had withdrawn within a week. Some declared neutrality. Others pledged allegiance not to Earth, but to a concept, accountability. The rest simply stopped answering his calls. He stood slowly, robes dragging behind him like the shadow of his former self. They used no armies, he whispered. No ultimatum. Just exposure. Behind him, footsteps. Not the mechanical stomp of his royal guard, long gone, but soft, deliberate. It was Lord Commander Vesson, gaunt, eyes dark with lack of sleep. We've confirmed the last counselor's suicide, he said, almost formally. There's no chain of command left outside this room. The Emperor turned to him. And the others? Some have fled. Others surrendered to local uprisings. A few joined them. Them? Vesson nodded. The Terrans. Or what the networks are calling the memory doctrine. He paused, as if unsure whether to say more. There's talk of forming a new coalition. Not ruled by one, but by vote. Terrans aren't leading it. They're letting others choose. The Emperor's face twisted. That's not power. That's chaos. Vesson met his eyes. It's working. For a long moment neither spoke. The Emperor walked back to his throne and touched its armrest. We used fear. We told ourselves it kept peace. But peace built on silence isn't peace. It's delay. Vesson looked away. Permission to resign, sire? The Emperor didn't answer. Vesson bowed once and left without waiting. Across the galaxy, fragments reformed into something new. Not unified, not perfect, but willing. Terran envoys, never armed, never armored, visited devastated worlds with data, names, history. The kind of records the Imperium had purged from archives. One of them, a teenage girl with no rank, stood in the ruins of Shularis Prime, surrounded by survivors. Her only speech lasted 2 minutes. We're not here to fix what we didn't break. We're here to give you back what was stolen. No threats. No contracts. Just access. The planet joined the Accord 3 days later. General Knox sat alone in orbit above Mars, reading the new reports. Warbreed deployments had been halted indefinitely. The Revenant fleet had entered self-powered dormancy. Obsidian was no longer needed. Most of its systems were turned over to Galactic citizen oversight. The Apocrypha, last of the war projects, had locked its protocols. Earth had built the sword. Used it once. Now it sheathed it in plain sight. Her comms pinged. A call from Tariq Rain, the embedded journalist who had been aboard since the Revenant's reawakening. Tell me something honest, he said, not bothering with greetings. Did you expect it to work? She considered it. I expected resistance. I expected losses. I didn't expect surrender to be chosen. Tariq leaned into the screen. Then what made it work? Knox looked past the feed, into the stars. We didn't ask them to believe us. We asked them to remember? The call ended. Somewhere on the far edge of the rim, a small mining colony raised a flag they'd stitched by hand. Not a symbol of Earth. Not even a military sigil. It showed a single open eye, stitched in silver thread. Under it, in Old Terran script, we saw. We won't forget. The message spread. The Accord wasn't ruled. It was recalled. People remembered old betrayals. Old promises. What Earth did wasn't conquest, it was catalysis. At the former Academy of Imperial Doctrine, now a free learning center, a new class of students studied fragments of forbidden history. One child raised a hand. If Earth could do that without taking over, why didn't they lead everything? The teacher smiled. Because they didn't want to be followed. They wanted others to stand. The Emperor watched it all unfold from his self-imposed exile on the Moon of Whispers, a desolate rock once used for interrogation. Now it was his penance. He had demanded to remain alone, no servants, no visitors. He spent his days walking the narrow cliffs, his nights listening to the last message Nox had sent him, stored on a looped recording chip he could never bring himself to destroy. You called us savage. Unruly. Loud. What you missed was that we only roar when we must. The rest of the time, we build. And wait. He would sleep with that voice in his ear, not as a curse, but as a lesson. Earth hadn't shattered the Empire with force. They shattered the illusion that it was untouchable. And in that quiet destruction, they became something the stars would never dare underestimate again. Not because of might. But because when they stood, it was always for something larger than themselves.